Welcome to the Deadlifts and Pizza podcast, where we discuss no BS fitness and nutrition.
We're your hosts. I'm Laura.
And I'm Jamie.
Let's get into it.
So I was trying to come up with some hot takes because we're going to do this what is it called? Meatless Monday.
Meatless Monday.
Something about Monday.
It's called Overreaction Monday. They do it with the NFL. So a lot of podcasters and other people will do it. And it'll be it usually has to do with football, obviously, if it's the NFL, but it'll be something like, after the last week, maybe a quarterback sucks or something, and someone has a overreaction. Maybe they had a slightly good game. So I think so-and-so is going to throw for 400 yards this week, something like that most people would be like, yeah, no, I don't think that's going to happen. But some people might agree with it, but it's usually something that goes against consensus. It's not we're not going to be deadlifts is a great exercise. That's not a hot take.
That is known.
So
got it.
It's not
so
typically. Okay.
I have some, but where I was getting stuck was we're kind of supposed to maybe disagree. And every time I would think of something, because every time I think of something, I was like, no, Laura's going to agree with that. And I'm like, no, Laura's going to agree with that. But then when I got out of that, I have some. So
okay, I have some other stuff to talk about too. So
yeah, go for it.
Okay. And I don't want to spend too much time on this because we did a whole podcast on it. But I want to go back to what we were talking about last week a little bit, because it's had time to marinate,
Yeah.
That was my immediate reaction after listening to it. And those were my initial thoughts. That's just my off the cuff yelling, thinking I'm Mel Kiper over here. Do you know who Mel Kiper is? Probably not.
And it was so stressful when I realized that my entire audio was missing and I had to it took all day to figure out. I was like, no, this has to air.
Mel Kiper is, I think he's on ESPN, and he had Shedeur Sanders #1 on his draft board, his mock drafts. He had him the #1 guy, and he had a complete meltdown because nobody was picking him, and he just blew up and imploded. That was me last week.
Really? That's funny.
Yeah, it's funny. Those people make me laugh. I wasn't as bad as Mel Kiper, but yeah.
No. But so it's marinated.
But it's marinated. And all of my initial thoughts, still totally
Valid.
Agree with them. Yeah, there's nothing.
It's marinated, and I just want to say it was correct.
Sometimes I'll think about things and I'll be like, maybe I was a little, I can see maybe I was a little off with that and whatever. But no, I thought about it more and it just solidified my thoughts. But yeah, a couple things. Is that okay? So I don't know Stacey Sims, right? So I don't know her as a person. I don't know if she's a good person. I don't know her intentions, and I'm not going to try to guess her intentions because that would be stupid, right? So this
I always assume that people have good intentions. I always assume that their intention is to help.
I'm more skeptical, but I also, and that's why I'm like, no, you're wrong. I'm very skeptical of people. Mm-hmm. I'm not one of those people that, the internet says it, so it must be true,
Yeah.
This person says it. This president said it, so it must be true. No.
Are we going there?
No.
Shall we? No.
I'm just kidding. So I don't know her intentions. I'm not going to try to guess her intentions. But what I do know is that there are a couple ways that couple strategies people use to sell you their shit, whatever they are selling, whether that's information, getting more followers, people, whatever it is that they're selling. There's a couple things that they do. And one is generally talking in extremes or talking in extremes or absolutes, so saying something like, there's nothing that will strip fat off your body faster than going in an ice bath, those kinds of things, or saying things that working out without eating, your body is going to burn your muscle. Those types of things are things that people generally say when they're trying to grab your attention, right? Another one is tell people that they're special, right? Telling people that it's not their fault. There's something wrong with them. They're special, whatever it is. It could be your hormones. It's your hormones. It's cortisol. Cortisol is the big buzzword, telling people they're special. You're a woman, so you're different and you need to do things differently, that kind of stuff. Or telling people that they've been lied to or they've been doing it wrong this whole time and you've been lied to, but I know the secret. And you've been doing it wrong. You got to do it this way. You know what I'm saying? People do that also. Like, veggies. Vegetables are bad. You've been lied to. We've been told that they've been good this whole time, but vegetables are bad, right? That kind of stuff. Or lifting. Or lifting past 8 reps is bad. Don't do that. You got to lift in the lower rep range. It totally makes sense, right? So don't know if those were her intentions, but when you think about that, she's doing all of those things.
Yes, but this is the what's the devil's advocate? This is like the devil's advocate in me, because you're right, and I agree with you, and that can be like a negative thing, right? But there's also the fact that, like, so I've used some of those tactics. I have sent an email that has been like, "You've been lied to. Here's the secret." But everything I'm saying is correct. Because sometimes it really is just like, you literally have been lied to if you think you need to eat bird food and do, massive amounts of cardio all of the time. So like, it's like that balance too, because then the other side of it too is, and I've heard Jordan Syatt talk about this before, because I was like in his mentorship. So on like the business side of it, the idea that like sometimes you need to grab people's attention and you need to hook them in with something extreme in order to get them to be a customer so that you can actually help them. Because if you're constantly just shouting nuance and gray zone, and well, it depends from the rooftops, and nobody's going to pay attention, and people will continue to gravitate towards the extremes that will harm them. So if you can get their attention and bring them in a way that you can actually help them. So that was like, a thing too. I think somebody was saying, why do you always talk about fat loss? And he was like, well, there's so much more to it, but fat loss gets people's attention. So if I keep talking about fat loss, I will bring people in and then I can help them.
But that's not the same thing. Like, so talking about something that someone's interested in compared to.
Yeah, you're right.
You're basically saying the ends. What is that saying? The means justify the ends justify the means.
Yeah.
Whatever it is, the ends justify the means. So basically, you're saying like you can do this not so great thing if your intentions are good in the back end.
Yeah, but I mean, it's still like you wouldn't be like, carnivore is best and you should do this, and then be like, but I'm just telling them that so I can bring them in and then talk about the benefits of fiber. Like, it wouldn't be that like, right, like controversial or opposing or polarizing. But if she really stands behind what she believes in terms of women should be eating beforehand, if I just make this a more extreme statement, I'll be able to help more women.
I don't,
you know what I mean? It's like, I hear you, and I'm not saying I do.
It goes against my core beliefs in who I am, because I'm not that person. Like you'll never see me doing that stuff.
Yeah,
at all.
Yeah,
I can't.
I'm with you. I'm not saying I disagree. I'm just saying like the other side of it, I guess.
I have a little bit more to say on it too. So I think, this is my belief, that, and this is me talking on a macro level, so this isn't me talking like to you, the individual, not each individual person, because your situation might be different, because I talk in nuances, not unlike other people. So right now I'm speaking on a macro level, so don't think I'm talking to you personally, whoever's listening. But as a whole, I believe that women, the reason why they have a hard time building muscle when they get older is because it becomes harder, right? Because we don't have those hormones, right? So we don't have the anabolic hormones helping us in the same way. So the things that you got away with when you were younger, you're not going to get away with now. But right. I do believe the same things still get you there. So just because you are older doesn't mean the game changes. Doesn't mean all of a sudden you need to do things differently and now train in low rep ranges. There's no studies that show that low rep ranges are better than higher rep ranges when it comes to building muscle, right? That that doesn't show up. And actually for a while, people thought the opposite. So that doesn't make sense that all of a sudden, because if that's the case, and if it sends the biggest signal, then everybody should be lifting in that rep range, no matter what your age is. What I think the reason why women have a hard time when they get older is because they don't optimize the things that they should be doing. So protein, right? It's a fact that most women don't eat enough protein. And as we get older, you probably need more of it to optimize it. So like aiming for 1 gram of protein per pound of your ideal body weight instead of like the 0.7, aim for the higher range because you probably actually need more. And then the other one is that they don't work hard enough. And I know that sounds like, like an attack, but it's true. Like how many clients have you had where you said, all right, do the set an RPE of 8, and then the next set, do as many reps as possible with that same weight. And they're able to do 7, 8 more reps that they were leaving on the table because they think they're working hard, but they're not really working hard. And those are the reasons I think it's hard, is because when you get older, like when you're younger, you might get away with that. But as you get older, you're going to need to optimize what you're doing to make that happen. And so I don't believe it's impossible for you to build muscle as you get older. I think it's harder. You just have to do the things, you know?
Yeah. Like you were saying, I say the same thing. Like you can't get away with the same stuff you used to get away with, but the stuff you were getting away with also probably wasn't like foundational stuff.
No.
It was a lot of stuff that you shouldn't have been doing anyway.
Yeah.
And the only reason it worked is because you're so resilient.
Yeah.
Or it worked, quote unquote, is like, our bodies are really resilient when we're younger for the most part.
Yeah. And like, I'm thinking,
so you're having to change it.
And other things is like personal experience that I know it's possible to build muscle as you get older, because how many clients have you had that have recomped and they're older women? Like they come to you and, their weight stays the same, but their inches have dropped. Obviously, if their inches have dropped, that means they've lost fat and built muscle. So it's definitely possible when you do things the right way. And the ones that happens with are the ones that actually do the things that we tell them to do, like eat the protein and do the workouts at a high intensity, right? So I don't like I don't like when people tell people you can't do something. I believe you can. You just have to work really hard for it. Yeah. It's just going to be harder for you. And that's how I feel.
Yeah.
Okay, let's see. I have a couple other points. Okay, keep going.
Is it in the same thing? Is about this?
Yeah. Do you have any thoughts? No. Okay. The other thing, this is my personal belief. There's no studies that show this, so this is just what I think. And I know there's other people that think this too. Doing a study on this would actually be very challenging. So I think it would just be really hard to prove this because it would need to be really long. And I don't know how you would conduct a study like this. But I also believe that the way to get your body to change is to do things that, that you're not, like to challenge it, right? So if you're doing something like, if you're challenging your body, it's going to change. So that thing that you're doing that is challenging becomes easier later, right? So if you're lifting close to failure, your body's like, wow, that was really hard. I need to adapt to this so that next time this is easier, right? But when you are brand new, you don't actually have to do as much to get that same change because anything is more than what you were doing before. So anything is hard for your body and it's going to, and it's going to change. And as you do more, it becomes more challenging. So in that same vein, I believe that when you switch things up and you do something that's you're not used to, that it also sends a really big signal to build muscle or adapt and change, because it's like you get those newbie gains all over again. So if Stacy Sims is telling women to lift lower in the lower rep ranges when they're used to lifting in the 10 to 12 and they don't ever lift in those lower rep ranges, I believe that that's going to that would build muscle really quickly, right? You are going to adapt to that really quickly if you never do it, because it's your body's okay, this is hard. I don't know what this is. I need to change and adapt to this, right? Which is why, when you were saying what's the point? Like, who cares about muscular endurance? That kind of stuff. And it's like, I do. I want to be a well-rounded person, and I want to do all of the hard things and challenge myself and do the different things. And that's part of the reason I do it, is because I like to get good at all the stuff. And I do believe that would actually build muscle easier with me doing less work because I'm not good at it. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it's kind of not at all, but kind of like what it made me think of is like when people go from eating like a crap diet to going carnivore, and then they think it's I feel so much better on carnivore. It was the carbs, and it's like, no, because you're eating whole foods now. You were eating crap before. Like, you can actually eat vegetables and fruit also. But yeah, but yeah, similar but not the same.
Do you think that too? That changing things up, you build more muscle that way?
Yeah, I still don't think though that it would be this like
thunder. Can you hear the thunder?
I did just hear something, but it was really light.
Okay, good.
It was like really light, like to where I questioned if there was a background noise at all.
Oh, okay, good.
But I did hear something. That's funny. I don't think it would necessarily be this big noticeable gain per se, though. I still think that even optimal muscle building is so slow that it's hard to notice. So even if you change things up and it happens sooner or faster, I think what might change quicker in a way that people actually notice it would be how much like stronger they feel, how much more capable they feel in their lives. And then sometimes what I've noticed is that things have like a placebo effect. So there might be somebody who feels like they have no arm definition, and then they start doing a lot of arm work in a program, and then all of a sudden they're like, oh my God, look, my triceps popping, and they'll turn in a certain way.
Yeah.
And I'm pretty positive that it probably looked the same if they'd have done that before. They just didn't necessarily like feel to admire it because they weren't, you know what I mean? Like, I think there's a little placebo effect of things too. Like, oh my God, it changed things up, and now look, when really it's like not that different.
Yeah. I hear what you're saying.
Do you know what I mean? Yeah.
I think what you're saying also is valid. I still believe what I'm saying though.
Yeah, and I agree with you. I do think that just having a different signal sent to your body incites more change. I just wonder if it's big enough to actually really notice in terms of muscle building. Like actual muscle, like visual muscle size. But I think strength probably increases pretty quickly.
I think it could. I'm just thinking of like the quad program, right? That was a total change from how I normally
train. I also think that I am somebody that doesn't notice things in general, like in life, but also in myself. So I'm just somebody that goes through life skipping, like doop de doop de doo, and I have no idea like what, like, you know. So I'm not a noticer. So if somebody is a noticer and is paying attention to things, they might notice it, whereas I might not.
Definitely. I don't know. I had more to say, but I think that's it. It's gone.
I want to ask you about this reel I saw.
Okay.
Have you heard of this guy named Andy Elliott? I don't think so. A reel came about in my Instagram feed, and he's like, he looks like he's a fitness guy, but he's actually like a sales guy. But he's very much like, if you look at his profile, he's like like hardcore fitness family.
Okay.
And I don't know what the point of the reel was, but he was basically up on stage. You know, he had his little headset and he's yelling at the crowd, something super motivational. And what he was saying, and this is why I thought it was like a fitness account, but it turns out he's like sales, which also kind of makes sense. But he was talking about how he was yelling at the crowd and was like, you know, we have this event coming. I don't know what it was. It was something that he was going to be speaking at, or some kind of conference or something. And he was like, and I, you know, my daughters, we're getting ready for this thing. And my daughters, they're 9 and 12 and they're, you know, eating junk food and doing their normal thing. And I said, hey, I have a challenge for you. If you can get a 6-pack by the time, you know, this event happens. And he was like, and they did it. Look, check it out. Girls, show them your 6-pack. And there's a 9 and a 12-year-old girl on stage with him wearing cute little fitness shorts and a sports bra, but they had a little fitness jacket over top. And they both unzipped their little jackets to show their core. And they didn't necessarily, what I thought was interesting too, was they didn't, when you say 6-pack, you literally mean the rippled, like I can count them and they weren't like that. They were just flat. I actually didn't notice the ripples of a 6-pack. But they did look very fit. I mean, they had like a flat tummy and they looked very lean. I mean, they're little girls, so of course they looked lean, but he was like, they're 12 and 9 and, they put in the work and they got a 6-pack. And I know a lot of you out there are probably like, I don't know, it was something like, oh, like you shouldn't make them do it, but this is about fitness. We're a fitness family. And, and that's obviously hugely controversial. And I see so many problems with what he came out and like said, and even putting these girls on stage and thinking they need to like getting them in the mindset of that they have to manipulate these things just to make their body look a certain way, I think is a huge issue.
Putting them on stage is definitely a problem.
Right. I know.
No.
Yeah.
No. So that to me is definitely a problem. I think with kids, it's better to talk about performance things than it is to talk about your body and the way your body looks. But like with my son, I'll say things like build muscle and things like that.
Yeah,
because
interesting.
Talk about like football, I'm like, you need those big muscles because big muscles is associated with being strong. And so really that's what I'm saying. Like we need to get you strong. So you need to eat this and that to get strong. I'll say those things to him. But because he doesn't eat enough, his medicine makes him like, I have to like force this kid to eat, and he used to just not stop eating. So it's just he's so skinny, and I'm like, you need to eat more food. So I say things to him to, motivate him to eat more food, and it works a lot of times. But yeah, I don't think that you should talk about your body as much as when you're that young. Yeah. I think that will happen naturally with the other things.
Yeah, that's why it's like I get in my head sometimes because it's like people who are very fit often, not always, often look very fit, right? There's often a look associated with being very fit. And there's a big range of what that could be. But usually...
By fit, do you mean like healthy fit, or do you mean like performance fit? Like I can
fitness,
I can run a mile?
In general. Yeah, people who can run a mile. If you look up like these markers, I think I saw this recently, like markers that you should shoot for if you want to be a physically fit person. And it's like a woman should be able to do 3 pull-ups. A man should be able to do however many. You should be able to run a mile. You should be able to, there's like these like certain things. People who can meet that are in general going to look within a range of a certain way, right?
I can barely do those pull-ups.
You can do 3.
I can do 3.
But do you know what I'm saying? There's absolutely an overlap of a certain body type fitting what it means to be fit or whatever. But there's also outliers. There's people who don't fit that body type that are very fit. And then there's people who are very thin and are not fit at all. They're just thin. And so it's like I don't want to directly teach my daughter that when she does XYZ, it will change the way her body looks. I don't want to teach her that. I want to teach her that when she does X, Y, and Z, it will change how strong she is and how well she can perform and how good she feels and how healthy her body is. But she's going to realize that it also changes or manipulates a little bit the way that her body looks also. So she's going to learn that either way, but it's about where I place the importance, right? And I feel like in this reel, it was like, yes, your girls are fit, but getting the 6-pack, the things they did to get the 6-pack might have been healthy, but they also could have not been, because it could have led to severe undereating before getting on that stage because they were going to have to show their 6-pack. Or what it's more likely to lead to is, because these are still little girls, it's more likely to lead them to think that that's what is important and that's what is valued about them. So that when they go through puberty and their body starts to change, they're going to start to think that that is like such a negative thing. And that even if they're still really fit girls, when they go up and down and like puberty and all that stuff, it's going to be this like really negative experience.
Yeah, totally agree with that.
I would say that is almost a bigger risk.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what like I think about with my daughters. Like she's on the cusp of going through all of these changes, and I want her to learn how to value her health and her physical fitness and all of these things now, so that when she does go through those transitions and she starts to pay more attention to her body and maybe is not happy with some of the changes she's seeing, if she already has the foundations laid because she's already eating very well and already has fitness is a valuable thing and performance and all of that stuff, it's probably a lot easier to stay in kind of that healthy range. Am I making any sense?
Yeah, I think so. I think that if you focus, like, just imagine if everybody in the world, instead of focusing on the way they looked, focused on health instead, everybody would look better.
Exactly.
Everybody would look better automatically. Instead of focusing on the way you look, it would drastically change the way you look if you were doing things because they were healthy and not, okay, I need to not eat right now because I'm fat. That doesn't work at all. So I do think that focusing on those things would help to look better anyway. And I don't, I mean, I'm trying to think, like, when I was a kid, I did both. Like, I worked out for performance reasons. And also I knew that, it would help to, build muscle, lose weight, all of that stuff. So I think it's fine if you're just, it's hard. It's also, I think it also depends on the child. It also depends on the child.
Totally.
Because some might take it different ways than others. Like, and you don't want someone's worth to be tied up in their weight or what they look like.
And then I also see there's this one family that keeps coming in my feed, probably because I watch their videos, where the little girl she's like 8 or 9 years old and she's very overweight, like dangerously overweight. And a lot of the reels are these funny little reels about her mom trying to get them to eat better because they all need to lose weight. And so they'll be in the grocery store and the little girl's like, but mom, I want to get the Oreos. And then the little girl's like, man, my mom's trying to get us to eat healthier. I got to eat these apples. But you know what? The apples are good for you because they do all these things. And it's just kind of like, you kind of are like, that's great.
Yeah.
It's just a hard balance, but I can 100% say that having your 9 and 12-year-old, like, you're going to adjust the way you eat so that you can get a 6-pack, so that you can stand on stage and show people how fit you are, is negative, right? Like, we're not doing it correctly. Maybe I could have been behind it, instead of being like, show them your 6-pack, get the deadlift bar on stage and be like, they can now body weight their deadlift. Or like, these girls can now do a pull-up. Look how fast they can run. Like, that would have been like, we're a fitness family. And if you work hard, you can run a mile in 7 minutes and you're going to do it in front of everybody because we're a fitness family. Like that, I could get behind.
Exactly.
And if they could do all of those things, they probably still would look the way they looked when they unzipped their jackets. But it's like, where you're putting the emphasis on. This is the thing that's important. And this is how you're going to, there it is. See, now I'm talking about it. This is how you're going to show the world that you're fit. Show them your 6-pack. Well, fuck everybody else that doesn't have a 6-pack. You know what I mean? Like, you don't get to be in this club.
Yeah. Like, when I talk to Caleb about certain foods, it's always like, this is what it does for you. It's not usually about weight. It's like, okay, eat the broccoli has this in it, and this is like, so he loves broccoli because all the things he knows it has in it. Like, this prevents cancer. He's like, what's cancer? So then we have that talk. But that's how we usually talk about food in this house. It's like, not like, this is fattening. This is going to make you fat. It's more like,
for sure,
all the nutrients, all the benefits of it, the positive, not the negative.
100%. And it's interesting because as much as I am excellent with my language in terms of that, the outside influence is what it is, right? And so my kids will come home bringing things, talking about things that I'm always having to kind of question and be like, let's examine what you said there, or what your thought process is there, right? So one thing about my son and my daughter is they're pretty close in age. And for the past few years, they've been only about 4 pounds apart in weight. So my daughter's always been a little bit taller, but my son's always been a little bit thicker, and they've been growing at the same rate. And she's only been 4 pounds heavier than him, even though she's, a year and 3 months older than him. And just now we realized that she's surpassed that and she's 7 pounds heavier than him. So she's growing at a faster rate than him all of a sudden. And of course he's jealous because he wants to get bigger faster because he's a little boy. And then she instantly is like a little insecure because she's thinking she doesn't need to grow faster and that's a bad thing. So she's instantly, that's bad, right? I'm gaining weight. I'm like, child, you were like 4 foot something and you're very, very skinny, and gaining weight at your age is a good thing. And so we talked about the nuance of like, both gaining weight and losing weight can be good and bad depending on where you're at in life, what the reason is, et cetera, et cetera. But the solid idea that gaining weight is bad is something that she's learned through osmosis out in the real world. And it's like not accurate. So we talked about all of that nuance. But another thing that she noticed is all of her shorts, they used to be real baggy, and she would have this like little stick sticking out of these like baggy shorts. You know what I mean? And now the shorts hug her thigh. And so she's noticed that her thighs are getting bigger, and she's been saying like, "Mommy, my thighs are getting bigger. Like, is this bad?" And she's like, "When I sit down, they spread." You remember when we used to, you've done it too. You used to, when you sit down and you look down, you're like, "Oh, my thighs are fat," because they're spreading on the chair.
Oh, yeah. I know what you're talking
like,
about.
how stupid is that? I look back and I'm like, that's idiotic. So I don't tell my daughter she's idiotic, but I'm like, babe, that's like, that doesn't make any sense. But I tell her, I'm like, when she's like, "Mommy, my thighs are getting thicker," I turn around with a big smile on me. I was like, "Dude, that's awesome." And she was like, "Why? Why is that awesome?" I was like, "Think about how much stronger you'll be. You already did like a body weight deadlift. Like those, you get me some strong legs. Like, you see mommy's legs?" I was like, "These things are strong, you know?"
Yeah. I'm always trying to get bigger thighs.
Hell yeah, they're bigger. Let's triple those babies.
Like,
we could show my quad program.
It's a good thing. Yeah, right. Yeah. Don't girls like hit a growth spurt before boys? Like, isn't there a time?
Yeah.
Like, that's probably what just happened. It's normal.
Yeah, I think it's in the process of happening, because what we've also been talking about is how all through middle school, I think it's pretty common that the boys then all of a sudden look kind of puny and the girls start looking womanly. And then you go to freshman year in high school and it's still kind of like that. But then you go home for the summer, and then by 10th grade, everything changes.
Yeah.
So I was telling her
the
about
boys'
that
voices
too.
are different, and you're like, "What happened to Tommy?" Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, it's a little wild to be experiencing it and watching it in like real time. All right. You want to do a meatless Monday?
A meatless Monday.
Yeah.
Let's call it. It's not really overreaction, so it's like more like hot takes, but we can still call it that. Whatever.
All right.
Okay. How many do you have?
Want me to go first, or you? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. But the 5 kind of is the same as the first.
I only have 3, so you should go first.
Okay. All right. I don't really think that you can increase your metabolic rate that much unless you like really adopt a high energy flux lifestyle. So people are always talking about reverse dieting, getting your metabolism higher. And I do think you can do a little bit of that. But I think for the most part, unless you get really, really active, I don't really think you can increase it that much.
I'm thinking because mine went up through the roof when I started lifting and eating more.
Well, I'm already assuming that people are lifting. I'm assuming people are lifting. So I'm really talking about like experience over the years with clients.
Okay.
People are already kind of lifting. They're already trying to get their 10K steps. They're trying to be more active, and they're eating 1,200 calories. We can increase their kind of like maintenance calories, but oftentimes we're still having to drop calories pretty low in order to get them to have fat loss. It might not be 1,200 calories low, but I'll see people a lot talk about like, oh, through reverse dieting, if you just start eating more and fueling your body more, you can get your metabolism to be like 2,500 calories. I've had women that are 5'2" that can eat 2,500 calories, and they just continue to lose fat and gain muscle. And I don't really think that's true. I think that you really can't increase your metabolic rate that much. And this is where it goes into like the 50-50. This is where you need to be a more active person, and not just in workouts. You have to be looking for ways to move your body like every single day, multiple times a day. And I think that combined with eating more and lifting will be the thing that helps actually improve your metabolic rate.
Okay. I think that you can maintenance, like, but eating more, getting your maintenance up. I think you can get your maintenance up pretty high. But remember one I wanted to do this and we never did it, but like a podcast of like what we thought we knew when we first started. I don't know how to say it, but it's different. We realized that wasn't true. What we thought we knew when we first started, and now that we've had some experience, you're like, nope. And one of the things was that's what I was taught, that to raise people's metabolic rate and then drop them down to lower calories. But every time I dropped them down to lower calories, they didn't lose that much weight, because we upped their maintenance, but you still, like, once you lower those calories back down, it's not like, so if you could get your maintenance to 2,500 calories, then you lower them to 2,000, you are not in a 500 calorie deficit, because there's the thermic effect of food and other things that have made it go up higher. So you might have to drop it down to more like 1,700 calories. I still think it's higher than if you didn't do that at all, but I don't think it's as big of a change as people like to talk about.
Agreed. Yes. And I think that your body adapts pretty quickly. So you might be able to get your maintenance higher. Your body will get used to staying where it is with more food. Mm-hmm. But then when you try to go and then lose weight on that, if you don't keep your energy output relatively high, your body's going to adapt pretty quickly to that.
Yes. It's funny too, because every time I go in to cut, my steps go up. You know, most people they become slower and they're like, or slower, their NEAT goes down and they just you become less active. I become more active, and I don't know if it's just because I do it during the spring and just naturally I get more steps at this time of year, because once it gets hot, I don't want to. And when it's cold, I don't really want to. So this time of year, I get like 12,000 steps a day, where normally I only get like 8. But still, even with all that activity, it still becomes challenging to continue to lose weight. Yeah.
Or I think about when my biggest comparison for myself, like anecdotally, is that now I have to eat 1,500 pretty consistently every day without much cycling in order to see consistent progress. But there was a time when I was living in Germany, so this was 5 years ago, I did 1,700 calories and I was starving and very lean and losing weight very quickly. And I think about what the difference was. I still worked out. I still got my 10K steps. What else was different? Well, I took my bike everywhere, and the bike doesn't account for steps. So every once in a while I'd put it on my shoe, but I wasn't really doing that actively yet. I would keep it on my wrist. I was biking to the grocery store. I was biking to pick up the kids from school. I was biking to all their activities. Like, I didn't get in my car. Like, literally every day I was taking my bike everywhere.
Yeah.
And even just that, I think my lifestyle was just higher output, period.
Yeah.
And I, you know what I want to blame it on? Oh, I'm almost 40. Look at that. Everything's a little bit harder. Everything's a little bit slower. It's so easy to be like, I really don't see that big of a difference. But when I really stop and examine, like, no, I had a lot higher output. My kids were younger, so I couldn't just like sit and ignore them for periods of time. Like, I was always like outside we were gardening, we were doing, so I had to keep them busy. They were little, and I was just always on the go.
This just made me think of a new one, so I'm adding one to my list.
Cool. Well, it's your turn, so why don't you just say it?
Okay, I'll do that one first then. I believe that our bodies have a set point that they are comfortable at, and it requires a lot of work to get past that set point. So if you are in the beginning of your weight loss journey, you are probably going to lose weight a lot easier. And then you're going to hit this part where the same things don't work anymore. And you're going to be like, oh, it's my hormones. It's because I'm this age, it's because of whatever. When I think that once you hit a certain point, it becomes more challenging. I'm thinking of like when I was a kid, I had never had a flat stomach. I never had a six pack, I never had a flat stomach.
You're not the epitome of fitness.
No, I was never fat.
I don't care how high you can jump or how much you can deadlift. You are not the epitome of fitness.
I was never fat though. You wouldn't say I was like a fat kid, right? But I always had a tiny little belly, right? And I've never lost that. And to lose that would require probably really, really hard work to get past to the point where I would actually have like a flat stomach.
We should have an event, and you can just have it a goal to have a six pack by then to really show how fit you are,
how hard.
And you get on stage. Yeah.
Like,
hey, we're a fitness family.
800 calories to get this.
Yeah. We value fitness around here,
Yes.
Man, the more that marinates, the more angry it makes me.
So do you think that's true, that you have like a set point and that it's hard to get past that?
I agree with you. Yep. Okay. I am a little conflicted, and I think this is where maybe it depends on the person, it depends on the situation, and it's very nuanced gray zone. But a lot of times when, somebody's doing all the right things and they start to lose weight, and then they hit that, what you kind of described as like a plateau, right? A lot of times, actually, I would argue maybe most of the time, they don't need to change anything. Because even though it's hard to get past that, their bodies kind of like reach this new set point. by just staying the course, you're also sending the message to your body like, yes, this weight is my new normal, but this lifestyle is also my new normal. And if they stick it out and stick with it, give it like 4 weeks of staying with the calorie deficit, then they'll drop again and they'll get over that little hump. However, is that little, so I'll have clients, they'll lose 5 pounds, whatever. They'll lose 7 pounds. And they'll get to a point on the scale where then it just kind of bottoms out and it's week after week and it's not really changing. It's not really changing. And what they want to do is like, okay, I need to do something different. I need to drop my calories lower. I need to do, et cetera, et cetera. And oftentimes the answer is just be patient, just wait. Your body's recalibrating. And if they just stick it out in another 4 weeks, boosh, it goes down again and it keeps going. Now, was that a real new set point? That's, I guess, the question. Maybe not. But I do think, because like I have a client currently who she's had multiple instances where she's had this set point that she could not get past, and she did something extreme. She would do keto and 800 calories. She'd get beyond it, and then she'd be able to maintain it. And then she'd do keto, 800 calories. She'd get beyond the next point, and then she'd maintain it. So she felt like the only way to get beyond those set points for her was to do this like really extreme thing because her body wasn't responsive to these like 1,400 calorie deficits. So
it could be that you just need to wait a little bit longer. Yeah. Like I know for me, like once I get to 123 pounds, it's just like, okay, now I have to work really hard to get past that. And by set point, I know there's lots of like by set point, the set point means like that's where your weight, that's where you're comfortable at. So getting above that and below that, your body's like, that's your comfortable spot. So I don't know if I'm using the exact right term, but I think you could get to a certain spot where that becomes your set point and it gets really hard to get below it. Yeah.
Another thing anecdotally is that
and one more thing I have to say.
Okay. Do you want to say it?
I think that certain people's bodies are different too. So certain people naturally can have a 6-pack and naturally can look a certain way, whereas other people, to look like those people, you're going to have to work really, really hard to get there. You know what I mean? Like I don't think naturally my body wants to have a 6-pack. I don't think that's where my body is its happy place.
Yeah. Totally.
I have abs, but definitely not a 6-pack.
Yeah. You know? Where you hold your fat. How much body fat your body wants to hold on to, 100% is very genetic also. So like, there's plenty of little girls walking around looking just like these other little girls did. And they're not really that fit. They're just genetically lean little beanballs. Yeah. So it's like, is that really, something that I'm curious about is that I notice that where my body's quote unquote set point is now is like 133, 132. That's like the weight where like, it's really hard for me to get below that. However, but I used to be able to get below that. Like when I mentioned living in Germany, I was like 128. Like, why can't I be that again? Why is it so hard? But here's another thing I wonder with us tossing around this idea of this like extreme 2-week carnivore, right? That you and I have been like talking about doing. Let's just see. I haven't done that. But what I have done is I've adopted kind of the mindset of like being like protein obsessed. So I'm sticking with that, but I'm really bringing up my protein, and it's actually causing fat loss to happen a little faster. Now, I don't know if my fat loss results are happening faster or if I'm not tracking them. So this is interesting too, because the last time I did a serious cut, I was like taking pictures every week. I was stepping on the scale every day. I was watching it. I was very diligent. So by the time the 10 weeks had passed, I was freaking exhausted I didn't want to do it anymore. So I was like, yay, look at me. I hit 132 in 10 weeks. I'm going to transition out now. But now I've hit 132. And granted, I could probably go back and figure out when I started, but it hasn't been that long. Well, I was 140 then too. So I lost more in a longer period of time. It doesn't feel as challenging right now and I think part of it is because I'm not watching the data so diligently. I'm looking at it. I'm paying attention, but I'm not like, okay, it's Saturday. I got to take my pictures. Okay. I'm forgetting to step on the scale some days. I'm not watching it as diligently. I'm focused on my calories, but I don't feel necessarily exhausted, but I'm eating a lot of protein and I feel like I can keep going. And now since I have this, like, I'm wondering if I'll be able to get it lower, easier.
Yeah. Yeah. Sometimes changing things up can make a difference, I think.
Yeah.
Like the protein thing. I do that anyway. I eat a crazy amount of protein. So it's just normal for me. It doesn't help me that much.
Yeah.
I probably would have to do something extreme like carnivore or something.
I mean, I'm also eating like 1,500 calories every day. I'm having rare days that I go over that. So I've been really consistent with that. Whereas before I was doing more of a 15, 17 cycle.
That's what I'm doing right now.
I'm like, screw that, 1,500 every day. If I really need a 1,700 day, I'll give it to myself. I'm not going to hold it. But if I'm just 1,500 every day.
I think I have to drop them now because nothing's happening and it hasn't for a couple weeks. So I think it's time to go down a little bit further. So I'm gonna be a little cranky, Laura.
Yeah.
Because right now I'm not that bad,
Yeah.
All right. Do you have another one?
Yes. Most women use this idea of intuitive eating as a disguise for, I don't really want to be uncomfortable.
Uncomfortable. What do you mean by uncomfortable?
I don't want to make changes. Like, oh, I don't want to track. I want to intuitively eat. I intuitively eat healthy. The reality is they don't want to be uncomfortable. They don't want to have to change things.
So they're saying, oh, some people say that intuitive eating works, so I'm going to try that. But really what they're saying is like, yeah, I don't want to track. And
yeah,
these people say this works.
They're like, I don't see why I should have to track or do all these things. I tend to get obsessive. I'm very black and white. I'm going to do it intuitively. I'm going to do intuitive eating.
I'm going to intuitively pay attention to how much money I spend. I'm not going to budget.
Yeah.
I'm just going to do it intuitively.
And I get it. Oh my gosh, I get it. But you have to get uncomfortable, right?
Yes.
Do you agree with me?
Yeah. I do. Not with everybody. I think some people can intuitively eat. I think intuitive eating comes from, like, to be able to do that. What's the word? To actually be able to do that.
What's that word? Well,
that's not the word I was going to
be something intelligent. Oh.
It was supposed to be something intelligent.
Successfully.
Yes, thank you. I don't know if that's the word. Productively. I don't know. Maybe that was that word. Okay, but in order to do
throw out words
to do that successfully, I think that's the best word. You have to do the other stuff first. You have to track, because you can't intuitively eat if you've never tracked before. Like you have to because you might be able to intuitively eat your calories, especially if you're eating whole foods. You might be able to intuitively eat your calories, but to intuitively eat your protein is going to be really hard.
It's really hard for me before. Yeah. The couple days that I've been like, all right, let me just kind of intuitively try to get, I'm like, oh shit, by the end of the day.
Yeah. I agree.
Yeah.
All right.
You got one?
Yeah. Compound lifts will build more muscle in the long run than machines will.
Duh.
That's not a common thing. People say that they build the same. Studies show that lifting with like weights and free weights builds just as much muscle as machines.
But are they looking at total body muscle, or are they looking at a target muscle? So if you're looking at like a squat machine versus a squat, and we're measuring quad thickness, yeah, your quads might be the same, but what about all the other muscle you build because doing an actual squat with a barbell or even dumbbells activates other muscles?
Yeah.
Like, are we just looking at the quad muscle? Or are we looking at total body muscle?
Yeah, I agree with you. What about, okay, so some people say that deadlifts, for example, aren't really a good muscle builder because you don't have tension on like you're not keeping tension the whole time, right?
Mm-hmm.
I think that deadlifts will build more muscle in the long run because it's easier to consistently progressive overload and add weight, because nothing is going to get you stronger than a deadlift, right? So you're going to be able to add weight to that much easier than you can other lifts. Plus the carryover from that to other lifts is going to be higher. Plus lifting 300 pounds off the ground, I would think that would send like a big...
Yeah, but if you look at bodybuilders whose their intense focus is building the muscle mass on specific muscles, the muscle size, they don't do deadlifts.
Yeah, but have you ever heard of people who say that that they didn't because they thought they wouldn't, and then they did, and their backs grew like crazy, more than they've ever had with anything else before.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah.
So I think compound lifts, because you're working all of, I mean, when it comes to actual, like, what I think you should do both, just like everything else. Like, I mean, you don't ever have to do machines, but I don't think there's anything wrong with doing machines, and they could be helpful for certain things. But I believe, like, compound lifts, because you're working all of the stabilizing muscles and everything, I think they're better for real world stuff anyway.
100%. Yeah.
But I also believe that you can definitely build more muscle with those, and you can add weight to it easier. Like, if a machine, like a leg press, maybe you can add a decent amount of weight to it, but I don't think you can add as much weight to a lot of them compared to like a squat or a deadlift.
Yeah, I know. I agree. I mostly agree with that.
Okay.
You don't need motivation. You need a damn calendar.
I don't know why I thought that was funny. Just your face.
You didn't laugh at first?
No, because I had to think. I was just like, it took a minute. You don't need motivation. You need a damn calendar. So basically, you're saying
many people are waiting around for motivation when you need to put the things in your calendar and do it.
Yeah. Yeah.
You need to schedule it. You need to make it happen.
I just wrote a whole article about, like how to what was the title of it? I don't know, about like, how to make time for your work. People are always like, I don't have time, or this and that, like how to, and a lot of it is like, just do it.
Yeah.
Like, but in different words, like, okay, you make time to shower every day. You make time to brush your teeth every day. You make time to do those things every day because they're important to you. Well, if working out is important, you should be able to find time to schedule it and make it a non-negotiable and do it every day. Not every day.
You go to these meetings every day. You honor those. You show up to those. You'll get up early because you have an early meeting, or stay late.
I'm assuming you don't have motivation to do that.
Hell no. You can't wait for that to be over.
You're supposed to do.
Yeah. And you can't wait for that to be over so you can go home and be done with it for the day. Mm-hmm. And sometimes that's what working out is.
Yeah,
hopefully
you have to
not
your
in the long
way.
term. Yeah. And hopefully it's not like that. Like, that feels very burdensome and it feels like we're talking negatively about it. But the reality is it's going to be like that some days. And even once you fall in love with the process and you fall in love with the results and it becomes really a part of who you are, you're still going to have those days.
Yes.
But you have to prioritize it, period.
Priority. Yeah, definitely.
And if you have motivation, I'm so happy for you. That's exciting. It makes that whole process easier. But that's it.
Yeah, it does help to switch things up if you don't have motivation. That's what I will change up my workouts and make it fun.
Yeah. And sometimes there's a time and a place for, like, okay, I identify that I'm not feeling motivated. And this is what I'm going to do instead, or this is how I'm going to combat that. But to say like, and people aren't even saying it, it's more of like a thought that they have. It's like, they're just not getting started or not doing the thing because they don't have the motivation or they don't want to. Everything else is an excuse for why you can't do it.
How I know when it's probably time to switch things up is there are some mornings where I'm like, I don't want to do this today. But then I go and do my workout and I'm like, yeah, that was fun.
Yeah.
Once I get into it, I'm like, yeah, I got this. Other days I get into the workout and I'm like, there's another exercise. I don't want to do this one again. There's like that attitude.
Yeah.
And if that happens more than once in the week, I'm like, okay, time to change it up.
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah.
And that's where, when you wait for motivation and then you get motivation, and then using that motivation, you create a routine that sucks. And then when your motivation goes away, you hate what you're doing every single time.
Yeah.
Then it's like, well, then you just need to change what you're doing. You don't just stop because, I don't have any motivation anymore. It's like, no, you're doing the wrong thing, or you're doing too much of that thing, or,
switch it to 3 days a week, whatever.
Yeah. There's ways that you change it, but you need to honor it. And that's, I think, that like the main thing that I see is like, people not honoring that or saying they don't have enough time or winging it and then getting to the end of the day and being like, man, the day really got away from me again. And you just need to do the thing.
Yeah. If you have time to shower, you have time to work out.
Yeah.
All right. Mine?
Yep.
Okay. I wrote,
last one, I think.
Is the last one?
I think so, because we're at an hour. So
okay. We can sometimes rely too much on studies in the fitness industry, and personal experience also matters.
I agree with that. I think you could have said it a little bit more controversially to make it more of a hot take.
Yeah,
I think you could have been
everything.
Like,
I always give everything nuance.
Too much nuance. Yeah,
I do. I give it too much.
You could have been like
too much.
Anecdotal studies. We have too many studies. Anecdotal is where it matters.
That I don't agree with, though.
Because but then we could have drawn people in and then discussed the nuance.
Right, exactly. Yeah. And by personal experience, I mean, okay, if you're a trainer and you've been training a bunch of people and, you always notice this one thing that, like, for example, like changing up their program seems to, build muscle easier or something like that. Like we were just saying earlier. I think that matters. And eventually studies will probably prove all the things that you think is true. And then the studies, when it comes to studies, you can find a study that proves whatever you want to believe. Like there's studies that show that this is good, and then the same study or a different study will show that same exact thing is bad. So yeah, I think we were.
Yeah, and I mean on that studies. Note, I feel like I need to defend. There are good and bad studies, and the purpose of, because I think there's a general consensus of like, well, yeah, that's true. So how's anybody supposed to know what is and what is not? And I would say there are ones that are poorly done or poorly interpreted, and that's where it comes to following the right people that are looking at all of these things. They know how to read and interpret research, and they know how to then give a best case like scenario. Like here's what we generally know to be true, and here's some general recommendations. Why are you laughing?
Because you're like, this is where we need to follow the right people who know how to interpret these studies. Yes, follow the right people who know how to interpret these studies, not ones who say that you only need to rest a minute and a half in between your exercises.
Oh, right. Well, so but when I'm thinking of it more extreme, you've got studies that show that caffeine prevents cancer and studies that show that caffeine causes cancer, and so nobody knows what to do, so they just say, well, I believe this kind of weird thing because I'll find a study to support that too. Like caffeine causes, psychosis. Okay. But there's really like, even though we have these like contradicting things that show there are some general truths that can be mapped out with nuance within them, right? Based on certain things. So what I'm trying to say is studies definitely have a place. Everyday average person shouldn't just be reading the front page of like New York Times and then being alarmed of whatever health study just can't, you know what I mean?
Yeah. I mean, there are certain studies where creatine, there's so many studies that show that creatine is beneficial, right? I mean, it's pretty much, the studies have helped prove that is a positive thing. There are a lot of studies also, though, that show correlation and not causation. And then people will think, well, okay, people who drink caffeine seem to have higher rates of cancer when it has nothing to do with the caffeine. It's just that it just happened to be that they also drink caffeine, or that meat is bad. Meat causes cancer when it's really people who eat a lot of meat don't eat as many vegetables, and that's why they need more vegetables. You know what it makes
me think of? Did you see the recent Bill Campbell post? And it's probably in his research review.
No.
Are you ready? All right. In 1 hour, we're going to give you.
I haven't been on Instagram in a long time.
Good. A quiz or a test or whatever.
Yeah.
It said, which of these activities lowered the individual's resting metabolic rate? So their metabolism decreased based on A, endurance training, B, strength training, C, a hybrid approach, or D, none of these. Reduced their metabolic rate.
None.
So I guessed D, none of these. And then when I scrolled, it said A, the endurance activity. The people who only endurance trained lowered their metabolic rate, which is a bad thing. You don't want your metabolism to decrease.
Yeah.
So I'm going in my head, I'm like, oh my gosh, is it because, and I'm going in my head, all these things that I know. Well, I do know that our body adapts really quickly to endurance kind of exercise. So maybe, and I'm doing all these things. And as I'm scrolling and as I'm reading, he then highlighted, hold on, you would probably think all the things that I was thinking in my head, but it was like, the reality is the people who did the only endurance training actually lost the most weight. They lost body fat and they lost muscle mass. And so percentage wise, their resting metabolic rate went down because it, the biggest predictor of metabolic rate is your body weight, whether or not it's muscle or fat. And it was like, because they lost muscle and they lost fat, they ended up losing more weight than the other groups who were also strength training. So if you actually percentage wise compared it, there was actually no difference in the resting metabolic rate.
Okay, so that makes sense because it was like a study where people were doing this activity. Okay, because I didn't even think of that.
But it was interesting because it shows that like you could take that as a headline and be like, endurance training lowers your metabolic rate, don't do it. But that's when you stop and really, well, wait a sec, well, what's really happening here? And it's and so there's just so much to that.
My brain did the same exact thing that you just did. Mm-hmm. Like I would say none. And then when you said that, well, that's like, yeah, exactly. I was thinking the same thing. Well, our body will adapt to it. So like just like everyday activities become easier.
I'm pulling all these things out I might
calories. Know. Like,
yeah. So it's like, even with the study where you said, okay, so, one person over here is saying that women recover better and you should only be, resting 1.5, minutes between your deadlifts. But, somebody over here is saying, no, 3 minutes is really what you need. We still know that strength training is important. Whether you rest 1.5 minutes or 3 minutes, yes, there's a more optimal one, but either way, we're deadlifting and we're trying to optimize the weight we're putting on the bar. So either way, we're still in the realm of like, good job. Right?
Yeah, it's true. It's true. And there are some workouts where you might only rest 1.5 minutes and some where you rest 3.
Yeah.
And it's all fine.
But I agree with you that and that's when it talked about like the whole eating before you work out. And it's like, but I feel great doing it this way. And if I force myself to do it a different way, it doesn't feel good. Like there's so much to be said for personal experience and anecdotal, but not anecdotal of all your friends and your friends' cousins' moms said, anecdotal in terms of like how it feels for you.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. I don't think we're all the same. And then, okay. So the other things I had about the studies too, was that, just thinking about studies in general, and this is why I don't always agree with every study, is because they're done in short time periods. Mm-hmm, so certain things might change over a longer period of time. They also are, it's hard to control all of the variables. So like that menopause study, it was like, well, they didn't control their protein. There's always something missing. There was something missing from them because it's expensive to do them and it's hard to get people to follow them exactly. And it's just, they're very hard to conduct. I had other thoughts too, but I don't just see like a study and think, okay, this study says it, so it must be true.
But other people do.
I know.
Yeah.
That's
so
why
it's like, that's where it's like, I agree
overreaction.
Yes, this is why I agree with you and I disagree with you because, again, it's nuanced. It depends. It depends on the person we're talking to. If we're talking to the person who is seeing these wildly different headlines and is then saying, well, studies say anything and everything. I can find a study to support everything. Therefore, I believe that carnivore is the thing that's going to get me to the afterlife. I don't know. Like they come up with their own wild thing because anything can be true. Like there's people following all kinds of weird stuff. It's like, well, you can find a study to support it. There's that like camp. And then there's like what you're more talking about, which is, yes, we have all these studies, but there's can be contradicting things or missing information. And we have to go by how we feel in the individual things too.
Yes.
So, yeah.
Yeah. All right.
Cool. Good
My
pod.
Last one wasn't very important anyway.
Nothing you say is important.
Nope.
Neither of mine were important either. Well, I'll say I can end on the last one because you'll agree with it. A faster metabolism is earned through years of muscle movement and consistency, not a 6-week bulk. Yeah. Would you agree with that one?
I agree. Yeah, it takes time. I leave Jamie messages all the time and we'll be like, you don't have to listen to this right away. It's not important. So that's why she said that.
Oh, you just wanted to clarify.
I just want to clarify that Jamie's just not a bitch. And she's just like, nothing you say is important.
Well, because Laura will say, you don't need to listen to this. It's not important. And I'll make the joke of like, well, if it's not about me or directly related to me, then you're right. It's not important. I don't want to hear about it if it's just about you.
That's how I feel. Like, this isn't about you or anything that you probably care about. So it's not important. Yeah.
So whenever she says it's not important, I'm like, nothing you say is important. Because it's so not true. That's why it's funny. This is the opposite of true.
Yeah.
All right. Leave a 5-star review, comment, like, subscribe, all that great stuff, and we'll see you next week.
Share with your friend.
Yep.
Bye.
Bye.